Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Truitt. We just wanted to make a video telling everyone about our situation and clearing up some of the things that we feel like the media has left out, and answer some questions that we've been getting. So first of all, I bought the land back about October last year. The house, after we probably moved the house here about mid-November, I started getting stuff ready. We moved in really first of January, and probably like a month or so later, we got the first notices from the city. They sent me a notice saying basically, hey, you have 7 days to move your house, or else. Basically, it didn't really say what. It just said move the house. And you know, I talked to a lady from permitting, and she said they left a notice, and they said, well, you know, you really just need to have the right permits. So I went down and I tried to get a building permit, which they wouldn't issue. And I said, why? And they said, because it's a mobile home. We won't issue a building permit. And before I had brought the house in, I had looked in the zoning ordinance. Our property is zoned as residential 2B, and if you go into the city zoning ordinance and read all of R2B, it doesn't say anything about trailers. It doesn't say anything about mobile homes. But finally, we were made aware of ordinance 73.3.1, which is in the miscellaneous section of the city's zoning code. So it's not actually under R2B, and this applies equally to all zones throughout the city, not just R2B, because it's in miscellaneous. And what it says is, all trailers except as hereinafter provided shall be located in approved trailer parks, regardless of whether or not such trailer is occupied. So you know, my first question to that would be, well, what do they mean by all trailers, and is our house classified as a trailer? So I looked in the ordinance, and at the beginning of the ordinance they have listed all of their terms and definitions. Well, they have defined the term house trailer. And I'll concede, yes, I believe that our home could be classified as a house trailer, if that's what you want to call it. However, in ordinance 73.3.1, they don't use that term. They simply use the term trailer. Well, what does trailer mean? The only definition of the word trailer I could find is in Alabama State Code, which defines trailer just as what you would think of it as, something that you pull behind a vehicle. You know, that could be a boat trailer, a utility trailer. It's something that's primarily designed for transporting persons or property. Our house is not primarily designed for transporting anything. It's really designed to be brought somewhere and left there for a long period of time. I mean, it doesn't even have wheels and axles on it. So under Alabama state law, our house is actually defined as a manufactured home, and it gets its designation not only from the state, but from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they're the ones that regulate the building standards on manufactured homes. So that's what standards it's built to, and that's what I believe their house is, a manufactured home, not, as they say, a trailer. So because of that, they wouldn't issue us any permits, and also because of that, they won't hook up any utilities. A lot of people have been saying, well, why don't you just get the utilities hooked up? Because of the fact that we're unable to get any permits, the utility company won't hook anything up. They won't hook the power up, the water up, or the sewage lines up. And I had planned the whole time that I wanted to have something that was off grid and sustainable, but I would have been willing to, you know, have the sewer line hooked up, have the water line hooked up, if that's what they wanted in order for us to comply. But they won't even allow us to do that. So they've already taken that option away. The only thing I was told is that, hey, you basically have to move the only way that you can comply with this ordinance is that you basically have to move your house. And they said, well, you could apply for a variance, which may or may not be accepted, and then there's all this paperwork and stuff that you have to go through for that. And we had intended to apply for that, although I strongly feel that why should a citizen be forced to apply for a variance in order to comply with an ordinance that was unconstitutional to begin with. And I do feel that this ordinance is unconstitutional because of the fact that no one could tell me what the purpose of it was. You know, I talked to planning, I talked to zoning, I talked to engineering, I talked to permitting. I even spoke to the city council and our city councilman, and the only thing anyone could tell us was, well, that's just the ordinance, and we enforce it. You know, I just keep asking why. What's the purpose of this ordinance? When they pass a law, it's supposed to have a legitimate interest in protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. Or Alabama State Constitution, Article 1, Section 35 says that the sole objective and only legitimate end of government is to protect the citizen and the enjoyment of life, liberty, and property. And when the government assumes other functions, it is usurpation and oppression. That's Article 1, Section 35, objective of government. And to me, if they can't give me a reason, it's not serving any of those functions and is therefore unconstitutional. And that's why I do strongly believe that zoning ordinance 73.3.1 is violating both the state and federal constitutions, because they basically have no reason. I have felt that the real true reason of it is simply economic discrimination. They don't want low-income families being able to own a home inside the city. They want to keep you relegated to renting a property, or just keep you out of the city altogether. I mean, saying you can't have any what they call trailers or mobile homes, manufactured homes inside the city, that's taking away a major affordable housing option from people that want to own a home but can't afford to build a brand new, $250,000 house on their property. I don't feel like we're hurting anybody by being here. I don't feel like we're driving down the property cost. We'll make another video later showing you guys the rest of the neighborhood, and really we're not hurting anybody by being here. We're in a secluded area. You can't see the house from the road. I just don't see who we're hurting, and I don't see what legitimate purpose that ordinance could have. So I basically kind of ignored them for a while, and probably like a month or so after that, it was early March, or late March, probably early April maybe, I think. Actually, I'll look at the date on this citation. Okay, so April 1st of this year, they came out here to issue us a citation for the zoning ordinance violation, which I was kind of expecting them to do that, because I said, well, if you're not gonna give me a reason for the ordinance, I'm just gonna, I'll just go to court with you on it, no big deal. Well, so it was early that morning, probably around like 8:30 or 9. Fortunately, that was my day off. It was a Friday. We were still asleep in bed. Like I said, it was pretty early still, and I was woken up by the dogs barking at the door, wanting to go outside, which is normal. We usually get up early, we let them out in the morning. So I got up, I put on my house shoes, I opened the door, and immediately they just like took off, like running out to the side of the yard barking. I knew that something was wrong, so I chased after them, and I see these two guys walking up from the side of the yard, and they weren't in uniform. They didn't have anything that said that they were from the city. They didn't have a warrant. They didn't announce themselves as police or being here. One of them had on a pair of khaki pants and like a black zip-up jacket and a black baseball hat. And as I'm coming around the corner of the house, I see he's got a gun pointing at the dogs, and he's like pointing it at me when I came around the corner. I was like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing back here? He said, it's like, I'm the goddamn police. If you don't, call those dogs up, I'm going to drop them or whatever. And he's, you know, pointing, waving the gun at us. And by that time, Soraya had come running out of the house after me, and he's like pointing the gun at her. And I grabbed the dogs and I said, hey man, you know, where's your, if you guys are police, where's your uniform? Where's your badge at? And he said, well, I'm a CRO. I'm not required to wear a uniform. I said, well, CRO, you know, we later we found out that meant community relations officer. So apparently it's good community relations to come to someone's house with no uniform and point a gun at them without announcing yourself as a police and without having any kind of warrant to be there. So we talked to those guys, and they issued us a citation. And I said, well, you know, you've done what you came here to do. You gave them the citation. Now go ahead and leave. And they said no, we're not leaving. And they detained us outside in our own front yard. They wouldn't even let us, like, it was still cold at this point. They wouldn't even let us go back inside to get a jacket or anything. They told me, they said, you can't go back in the house. You might have weapons in there. I said, you know, so what if I have weapons here? I live here. This is my home. I'm allowed to have, you know, that here if I want to. Because really, they were the ones that were trespassing on our property because they didn't have a right, they didn't have a warrant to be there, and we do have a no trespassing sign at the entrance of the property. And he said, you know, no, we're gonna detain you guys here, and we're calling community development to come down here and condemn this house, and you guys are leaving here today, is what he told us. So they called. We probably waited outside for about like half an hour, 45 minutes for this guy to come down there, and he came out. At first, I think he didn't really know what was going on, and they kind of went off in private and like talked to him for a minute. And then he walked back to the back of our, you know, property to the house, and he put this big yellow placard on the house, and it basically said, you know, this house has been condemned for unsafe conditions. They didn't really tell us why at the time. They just said, all right, the house is condemned, and the police officer said, you know, you guys have an hour to leave or you'll be arrested. And so after they did that, you know, they left, and immediately we went down to the community development department to file an appeal to the condemnation, because it says on the placard that we have like 14 days to file an appeal, or else we lose the right to appeal it and all that. So immediately we went down there and we talked to the lady, Miss Cunningham in community development, and she told us that we wouldn't be able to file the appeal that day because they hadn't actually issued any of the paperwork into the system for the condemnation. I said, well, what are we supposed to do in the meantime? You know, we were told that we'd be arrested if we went back to our house, and she just basically didn't have any answer for us. So we went back home anyway, and a few days later we went to the community development meeting to file the appeal that I had typed up, and they wouldn't vote on it that day because they said that they needed time to review it, so it would be the following month before they could actually vote on it. And you know, it turns out that month went by, and they didn't have enough people for the meeting. And finally, like a week after that, they finally voted on it. We were at the meeting, and they told us, and they denied the appeal. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what is on this this notice that they gave us. So it says electrical system not operational. And first of all, I also want to say they never actually inspected the house. They came out here and looked at it for about 2 seconds. And they said, well, the city utilities aren't hooked up. It must be unsafe conditions. That's what they're calling it. So they say electrical system not operational, sanitary facilities not operational, plumbing system must meet city plumbing code, unit lacks permanent source of heat, structure must meet city building code, electrical plumbing, etc. Sanitary systems not operational due to lack of services, lack of water, steps missing front and rear, which we obviously have steps out there now. So that was this, and I wrote up my appeal basically issue by issue addressing all of these concerns and stating how we have solar power, we have rainwater that we use composting to get rid of our waste, but they basically just blew all that off and denied the appeal. And I said, so you guys essentially would rather us be homeless than to live in a house that you don't like, that's not of your choosing. And one of the guys on the community development board said, well, I'm sure there's several shelters around town that they'll take you in. So essentially he was saying, yeah, we'd just rather you be homeless on the street. Which to me, I just couldn't believe the audacity of them to say that, and just the inhumanity. So a few days later, I actually had to go meet with Mr. Webster, the community development inspection guy, and he gave me this citation, and they basically copied word for word what is on this notice right here. They didn't change anything. And one thing that I'm really confused about, because this right here, this ordinance 7-357 Code of Ordinances, if you go and read that, it has to do with failure to comply with an official notice. But yet it doesn't say anything about what ordinances or what codes we were said to be violating originally. You know, what are we violating by not having city power, water, sewage hooked up? What ordinances are we actually violating? And they still haven't told us that. So essentially, it's like them saying, "Well, you're under arrest for resisting arrest." It's like a huge circular argument. They're creating their own justification, which I just doesn't think is right. And also, I wanted to read you what was on the original zoning ordinance violation. It says, Mr. Truitt was parking a trailer in a restricted zone. Well, parking, that it reads almost identical to a parking violation, which further confirms my belief that the ordinance really applies to trailers as you would think of a trailer, something that can be pulled behind a vehicle and not a home. So, in the meantime, we had gone to court, or gone to trial for the original zoning citation, and the trial was such a joke. They knew before we even went in there that what they were going to say, that they were going to find us guilty no matter what we said. Because I gave them our argument that our house is not a trailer, and that it's a manufactured home under state law. And the judge just said, "No, Mr. Truitt, this house is a trailer." And the prosecutor said, "How did your house get there?" He said, "Did it get there on wheels?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, there you go. It must be a trailer." Well, guess what? A modular home, which they say is allowed in the city, also gets there on wheels. A site-built home, you have to bring in all the materials on wheels. Just because you put wheels on something doesn't make it a trailer. You know, I can put roller skates on, I don't become a trailer. It's kind of a nonsensical argument to say that because it got here on wheels, it must therefore be a trailer. Because the wheels and the axles are removed now, it's no different to me really than a modular home. And I keep asking, what's the difference between a manufactured home and a modular home? And the only answer I've got is, well, the sticker says so. You know, it's a state designation. So essentially, no difference really. And you know, we had evidence. If you look around the city, there's a lot of other people that are living in mobile homes, and also there's a lot of businesses operating out of mobile homes or manufactured homes. And you know, I brought that up, and the judge said, because we had photos and stuff, and the judge said, "Well, Mr. Truitt, we're not here to talk about what you think of as being other violations of this ordinance. We're here to talk about what you're doing wrong." So they pretty much just dismissed everything that we said and wouldn't let us present any of our evidence. And the only piece of evidence that the prosecution had, they had one photograph of our house. And it was obvious that it was taken from inside our yard. And I asked Mr. Pierce, the zoning inspector, I said, can you see our house from the road? And he pretty much said, no, I can't really see it from the road. So I said, so you had to come in the yard to take this photo, right? And he said, yes, we took it from inside the yard. And I said, did you see a no trespassing sign outside the entrance to my property when you came in? And he said, yes. I said, well, Judge, they obviously obtained this evidence illegally because they didn't have a warrant to come and search my property. And they came anyway and took this photo. So I think that this evidence needs to be thrown out. And the judge basically said overruled. He said, well, there's a zoning inspection. He said, they don't need a warrant. They can come to your house and inspect anytime that they want. So there you go. You basically have no property rights. The cops and the zoning inspectors can come whenever they want on your property, inspect whatever they want, and basically do an unlawful search and investigation. And you know, we just feel like all of our rights had been violated. And at the trial, honestly, they acted like they were in as big of a hurry as they could be just to get to the end of the trial, shut me up, say guilty, and go home for lunch. Because they already, like I said, it was a complete joke. But when you have a city attorney and a judge paid by the city to find in favor of the city, in what sense of the word is that a fair trial? It's really not. And that's why we knew that we had to appeal to the circuit court. So I appealed that for a trial de novo, and I did reserve my right to a jury trial. We're just waiting to hear back from the circuit court as to when our new trial date is going to be, and we still haven't gotten that. And also in the meantime, we went to the arraignment for the community development violations. And here you can see all the stuff that they've written on here. It took them 2 pages to write out everything. And when I went up there, you know, of course the judge always says, you know, do you understand these charges and stuff? And I said, well, no, Judge, I really don't understand the charges against me, because what you have written on here says 7-357, and that doesn't have anything to do with any of these complaints that are written on the citation. And instead of actually explaining it or letting me enter a plea, he just said, well, I'll just put you down for a plea of not guilty and we'll set it for trial, which they're really not supposed to do. They're supposed to allow you to enter a plea yourself. But he pretty much just wanted to shut me up and get me out of there as fast as he could. So again, basically no consideration from the city, basically for our opinion or our legal rights at all. Like I said, you know, we also feel like this trial is going to be a complete joke. And if we're found guilty, then I plan to appeal this one also. But that's pretty much the situation that we're in right now, and we're just waiting at this point. But I want to thank all of you for the support that we've been getting, and I would like to ask people to continue calling the city, letting them know that affordable housing and self-sustainability are not a crime. You know, who are we hurting? Who's the victim here?